The unofficial beginning, 1888. This wasn't a formal initiative. Two cricketers, Alfred Shaw and Arthur Shrewsbury, saw an opportunity to make both history and profit. They formed a team of 22 mostly English players, with a sprinkling of Scots, Irish and Welsh, and embarked on a grueling 7-month tour that covered 35 rugby games in Australia and New Zealand. They squeezed in 35 rugby fixtures, winning 27, drawing 6, and losing just 2. Not bad, considering half the team didn't even get national caps. They even played 19 matches of Australian rules football, winning 6 despite having no prior experience. It was rugged, relentless, and raw. Players shared cabins, rationed food, and braved storms that tested their bodies and bonds. When tragedy struck and Captain Robert Seddon drowned early on, leadership fell to Andrew Stoddart. But the mission didn't stop. These men did more than tour. They built a legacy. While no official test matches were played, the 1888 expedition laid the foundation of Lions folklore. It was a team with no shirt grabbers, no tacticians, just mates playing hard. Tough rugby, and they returned home. Heroes in spirit. 1891. South Africa, the first official tour. 3 years later, the Lions returned, this time officially. The 1891 tour to South Africa became the first full British Isles tour, recognised by the RFU. Led by Bill McLagan, a Scotsman, the squad played 20 matches, winning them all, including 3 test matches. The series was a whitewash, 3-0. The British mainland not only handled provincial sides, but completely dominated the Springboks. South Africa didn't score a single try across all tests, making it the Lions' cleanest slate in history. This tour showed the Lions' capacity not just to survive amidst jet lag and new styles, but to thrive. They marched through an opening era with discipline, finishing unscathed, and loudly shook the ball that the Southern Hemisphere had arrived on the global rugby scene. 1-8, 9-6. South Africa, the revenge tour. They headed back 3 years later and retained their Aussie Nam momentum. The 1896 South Africa tour saw the Lions again, coming out on top with a 3-1 Test Series win. Though not a complete sweep, it confirmed the Lions were no freak ensemble. They were a touring heavyweight. Back home, supporters realized this team wasn't just novelty. The model was working. 4 nations best united for a cause, and plaque-worthy stories were being etched in rugby lore. 1899. Australia, building a true union. In 1899, a historic shift happened. The Lions returned to Australia, this time drawing players from all 4 home unions. They played 21 matches, including 4 test matches, winning the series 3-1. Australia was no pushover, but the Lions pushed through, victory down under. This tour was the first to feel like a true Lions team, crossing not just hemispheres, but politics of home unions, uniting fans worldwide behind a red rose, a shamrock, thistle, and Welsh dragon. Early 1900s, 1903, 1904 to 08, 1908. The early 1900s broke ground on multi-territory tours. In 1903, they toured South Africa again. Results were mixed, but rugby grew stronger on both sides. 1904 marked the first joint tour to Australia and New Zealand under the title British Isles, with Scotsman David Bedell Sivright as captain. They swept Australia in the tests, but lost to the All Blacks, a wake-up call. The 1908 Anglo-Welsh tour, Ireland and Scotland sat out under Boxer Harding, played 26 games, winning 19, drawing 1, losing 6. Test results were tough. No wins, 1 draw against New Zealand, 2 losses. The 1908 tour highlighted the challenge of touring the All Blacks, beautiful pitches, brutal rugby, and fierce defenses, but also showcased adaptability as Lions began thinking beyond just winning, building stories of resilience and unity. 1930 tour, the name Lions. Emerges by 1930, the team was no longer nameless. The British Lions name, coined in the 1924 tour, stuck. In 1930, they toured Australia and New Zealand under Doug Prentice. They played 29 matches, won 21, lost 8, including 1 test against New Zealand and 1 against Australia. This tour reinforced that even in victory, the Lions were mortal. Touring was an ideological push to challenge greatness and grow the game globally, test by test, across seas and cultures. 1938. Tour, the final pre-war clash. In 1938, the Lions made their last journey before World War II, going once again to South Africa. The outcome? A narrow 2-1 series loss. The Springboks were now a force, and South Africa had matured into disciplined nation rivals. Why these tours? Matter this early era did more than rack up wins or produce gnarly matches. Here's why it counts. Definition of endurance, no air travel. Tours meant months on crammed ships. Rugby was survival, creation of identity. In 1888, Lions were nomadic wonders. By 1938, they were British and Irish, carrying 4 Union flags, but one shared dream. Cultural bridges, Lions brought British rugby to new lands, inspired local passions, and grew rivalries that still burn today. Legend-making moments, think 1891 whitewash, the first test ever in South Africa, the All Black matchups in 1904. These forged myths and yardsticks. When the dust of World War II settled, rugby began the long task of rebuilding its traditions, and the Lions were right at the heart of it. The 1949 tour of South Africa marked their first post-war journey. Though they entered as amateurs adjusting to peacetime rugby, players like Jack Kyle and Carl Mullen brought artistry and grit. The result was a mixed series, but more important was the rekindling of the Lions' identity. Unity forged from England, Ireland, Scotland and Wales once more, on a global stage. The 1950s and 60s saw the Lions traverse the rugby world, revisiting Australia, clashing with New Zealand, and battling the Springboks. Some tours stung with defeat, while others inspired hope. In 1955, they fell short in South Africa. In 1966, they couldn't breach All Blacks territory. But each setback refined their resolve. Selection policies shifted, training became sacrosanct, and provincial showcases turned into crucibles for bonding and brutal rugby. It wasn't until 1971 that the Lions delivered what still stands as their greatest triumph, winning a test series in New Zealand, the only team to ever do it. Captain John Dawes, Coach Carwyn James, and manager Doug Smith didn't just tour, they orchestrated magic, with gritty Kiwi opposition breathing down their necks. The Lions stitched together physical dominance in the forwards with visionary backline plays led by Barry John, Gareth Edwards, and David Duckham. They opened with a famous 9-3 victory in Dunedin, weathered a storm in Christchurch, and sealed their reputation in Wellington with a 13-3 win. Then drew the final test in Auckland, clinching the series 2-1. That Wellington test is the stuff of legend. J.P.R. Williams landed a match-winning drop goal, his only one in a Lions jersey, and etched his name into history. But the story didn't stop there. 3 years later, the 1974 tour of South Africa would redefine what it meant to be unstoppable. Led by Willie John McBride, this Lions side went undefeated across 22 matches, winning all 4 tests and drawing 1. A perfect storm that earned them the immortal tag, the Invincibles. This tour was as raw as it was remarkable. The Lions adopted the infamous 99 call, a collective pact to retaliate immediately and simultaneously against Springbok aggression, ensuring no lion was left vulnerable in the brutal battles unfolding halfway around the world. That bout of collective grit meant the Lions would not only win, they would dominate. These tours were more than wins. They were statements. In 1971, the Lions shattered a 75-year drought by toppling the All Blacks. In 1974, they marched through apartheid-era South Africa with unbeaten ferocity. In both, leadership was razor-sharp. Dawes and McBride commanded not just tactics, but unity. Coaches like the pioneering Carwyn James spoke openly about managing circadian rhythms, long before jet lag was part of any athlete's vocabulary. Underlying all this was a cultural shift. Lions were no longer a collection of club stars. They were a cohesive force, a statement of British and Irish solidarity at its best, challenged by distance and adversity. To win away from home, they learned, you need more than skill, you need heart. And yet, such dominance wasn't just built in the test arenas. Take the provincial battles. In 1971, before the first test, they steamrolled through teams like Canterbury, Wellington, and New Zealand Maori, often by landslide margins, like a 47-9 win. In Wellington, that sent shockwaves through local rugby circles. In 1974, they tackled overwhelming physical hostility, stadium by stadium, and never flinched, even when it got personal on the pitch. The shadow of apartheid loomed large in 1974. While other nations hesitated, the Lions launched towards South Africa with intentions pure and singular: to win. They defied opposition calls for boycott, choosing to fight on the field rather than off it. Their success wasn't just tactic, it was moral reckoning. They came to play, not to preach, and showed whites and blacks alike that rugby transcends division. Looking back on this era, 1949 to 1974, the Lions evolved from post-war hopefuls into a touring phenomenon. The features of this golden age: leadership made of steel and wit, unity across formerly fractured unions, determination expressed through unbeaten streaks, and most of all, legacy, because these tours still speak louder than any trophy. The 1980s marked a turning point for the Lions. In 1980, under Captain Bill Beaumont, they travelled to apartheid-era South Africa amid political uproar and global debate. Despite winning all 14 provincial matches, the Lions stumbled in the test arena, losing the first 3 before salvaging pride with a monumental 4th test win. The tour was both a triumph of endurance and a reminder of the Lions' dependence on test-level dominance to truly succeed. By the early 80s, tours remained grueling but still rooted in amateur rugby values. In 1993, the last amateur-era tour to New Zealand ended in heartbreak. The Lions lost the Test series 2-1. They had beaten provincial sides convincingly, but crumbled in the main events. That tour felt like a bitter transition. Amateur camaraderie met professional intensity, and the Lions found themselves struggling to adapt. The full switch came in 1997, post-professionalism, when Warren Gatland and Ian McGeechan led a dazzling tour of South Africa. The Lions secured the series 2-1, their first Test series win since 1974. It was rugby reborn: rapid training camps, tactical match preparation, and late-night rugby movies. They weren't just competing, they were mentoring a new generation in modern sports strategy. 2 years later, in 2001, the Lions embarked on a trip back to Australia. This tour was chaotic in equal measure: splits between test stars and hot-headed midweekers, flair and frustration blended like oil and water. Expectation crashed headfirst into execution. They lost the series 2-1, but salvaged one test with surprise brilliance. The tour became a case study in team dynamics. No off-field unity meant no test triumph, even when talent was obvious. By the time of the 2005 New Zealand tour, the Lions were unabashedly global athletes. Under the famously rigorous Clive Woodward and assisted by McGeechan and Gatland, they arrived in New Zealand in red-hot form, dominating in non-test matches, including an astonishing 109-6 win against Manawatu. But rugby's toughest environments exposed their cracks. They lost all 3 tests, twice heavily, and the shine faded fast. O'Driscoll, Wilkinson, and the Lions which brings us excellence in 2009, but not in tests. In South Africa, Ian McGeechan returned as coach, joined by Warren Gatland, Sean Edwards, Rob Howley, and Paul O'Connell as captain. Unlike 1980, apartheid politics weren't in play, but the Lions were now a sponge for media, process, and ruthless professional review. Week 1 was a crush. They swept through 6 provincial sides, including a gritty 37-25 win over a Royal 15. Under mounting pressure, they pushed South Africa hard in the tests. The first test in Durban was a nail-biter, ending 26-21 to the hosts. The second fell to a last-minute penalty, 28-25, in a game of edge, of your seat tension. Then came the turning point. Ellis Park, Johannesburg. With the series lost, the Lions exploded with relentless aggression and systematic precision, winning 28-9. Their test record still counted the series as a loss, but that final match was transcendence. Hardened by criticism, regrouped in the blocks of pressure, they found a unity that proved their professionalism worked when blood and grit were mixed with strategy. What ties these tours together is not just the matches, but the transitions. From the 1980s amateur ethos facing political pushback, the Lions moved through a period of uneasy adaptation in 1993. By 1997, they accepted the world had changed, and they embraced it, winning and rebranding. But 2001 showed that adaptation required more than form. It demanded unity. In 2005, the allure of talent versus environment exposed deep fissures in its foundation. Finally, by 2009, with a series loss, but a final test that resonated with pride, the Lions found their teeth again. Each tour was a mirror, reflecting world changes in rugby professionalism, sports psychology, politics, and team culture. Provincial wins became less relevant. Test results became the measure of greatness. Coaches morphed from club tacticians to global sports managers. Players became celebrities. Media presence turned tours into global events. By 2009, the Lions weren't just evolving. They were brands. The public followed. Analytics shaped selections. Supporters traded jerseys online. The era of amateur toughness was gone. The era of business-savvy, multi-nation athleticism took root. The 2013 Lions Tour of Australia marked a rebirth. After a disappointing defeat in 2009, Coach Warren Gatland and Captain Sam Warburton led a revitalised squad that clinched the Test Series 2-1. It kicked off with a breathless 23-21 victory in Brisbane, followed by a narrow 16-15 loss in Melbourne and a emphatic hammering 41-16 in Sydney to secure the Tom Richards Cup. The tests that summer weren't just results, they were cinematic masterpieces full of triumph and moral victories. Replays of George North's flying try became emblematic of the Lions' resurgence. It wasn't just a win, it was proof the Lions could thrive in modern rugby's spotlight. Then came the 2017 tour to New Zealand, a grueling gauntlet many expected to break the Lions. Instead, they delivered drama. Sam Warburton's leadership and a never-say-die mentality saw them draw the series 1-1, the first draw in the Lions tour since 1955. Eden Park's iconic draw was less about perfect execution, more about survival. The Lions battled through tempests of expectation, walloped them with commitment, and held firm. It became a story of unity, adaptation under pressure, and refusing to bow. Their provincial record was flawless, and though tests slip away, the Lions demonstrated they belonged in modern legends. South Africa 2021 arrived under unique constraints. COVID interrupts, empty stadiums, restrictive schedules. Under coach Gatland, they faced a Springboks team looking to defend their 2019 title. The Lions fought, losing the first and third tests, but stunning the Boks in the second, a 27-24 thriller that showed raw character. It wasn't about winning, it was about growth. Emerging talents like Lewis Rees-Zammit proved that even in defeat, the Lions could unearth gems. But the real evolution came with 2025's Tour of Australia. Head coach Andy Farrell, architect of Ireland's 2023 success, was appointed in January 2024. His leadership emphasized unity, scouting, and cultural strength off-field, skills seen in Ireland's Six Nations triumph. The 38-man squad was unveiled at the O2 in London, a spectacle fitting for modern-day rugby's public reach. Maro Itoje became only the second English captain in the professional era and the first Black Lions captain ever, a major cultural milestone. Itoje's leadership persona, fierce, cerebral, unifying, signals change. This tour opens differently. A warm-up test versus Argentina in Dublin echoes history, the first Lions test ever played in Ireland. It's followed by 6 matches against Super Rugby franchises, including an invitational side representing First Nations and Pacifica heritage, adding cultural flavour. The 3-test series in Brisbane, Melbourne, and Sydney will close the chapter, yet injuries cast early doubt. Tight head prop Xander Fagerson ruled out before camp. Tadek Furlong's fitness remains questionable. Andy Farrell described the Portugal training camp as preparation heat up. No excuses allowed. Even before the first match, this tour is shaping up to be a battle of depth, resilience, and cohesion, about more than talent. What brings these tours together is context. By 2013, the Lions fought modern rugby's glare. In 2017, they proved they could survive New Zealand. In 2021, they persevered through adversity. Now 2025 ties it all together. Heritage, inclusivity, professionalism, and a hunger to win another series. In modern rugby, the Lions tours have evolved from nostalgic adventures to elite campaigns. The tours are now televised extravaganzas, social media spectacles, and global fanfares. Each fixture a story, each test a legacy. Coaches are tactical masterminds, media savvy, player builders. They aren't just navigators of rugby, they are leaders of belief. 8 provinces in 6 weeks become tests of character, not schedules. Looking ahead, the 2025 tour could define a career for several players. Itoje's leadership, Farrell's vision, they both have the chance to turn a squad into a dynasty. The style? While New Zealand and South Africa favoured brute force, Australia demands adaptability, high tempo, scoring flair. Can the Lions rise under that pressure? The Lions' legacy still craves test wins. The glory of 1971 and 1974? It still echoes. Even the draws and second-best moments, 2013's wins, 2017's resilience, 2021's grit, they all add chapters. 2025 is next. Success here wouldn't just be victory in the southern skies, it would be history. What are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.